That's better.
Is that better?
Yeah.
See, the thing was, no, the thing was on one of the other recordings we did where Lou was videoing us, which is happening today. I'm really trying not to look at the camera.
Yeah.
I do that the whole time. I feel like I'd be a really good.
It's called something that when you look at the camera, isn't it?
Breaking the fourth wall.
Breaking the fourth wall, yeah.
Because it lets people know who are watching that they're watching something rather than it just existing in its own
Breaks
reality.
the immersion.
Exactly. But what was I going to say? I
have no idea.
On one of the episodes we did where Lou was filming us and I had to do the old leg slap to get it in. I forgot to take it out of the audio recording. So at the beginning, genuinely, did you hear that? And so at the beginning of one of the episodes is just the sound of me slapping my own leg.
Oh God,
that's a good way to start. Maybe that should be like either intro music, just you slapping your leg,
just repeatedly.
Yeah,
I think people would enjoy that.
Some people would,
Well, you. I think you'd enjoy it.
Obviously.
Yeah.
That's all I'd listen for.
Yeah. I think it's probably worth us kicking off the old podcast. The reason that we're here, the reason that the three of us are around the table, ready to discuss some patient scenarios, some case studies.
Yeah.
On today's show, I've got this patient, as is the usual custom. Do I introduce you? Should I introduce you? I think you've done a lot of talking. Everyone knows who you are, don't they?
Yeah, they know who we are now.
Leah, David, hello guys.
Hi.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. David, you awake now after your laps?
Just about, yeah. Just been out getting them steps in, aiming for 10,000. Everyone should go for it.
Yeah.
Just pick an arbitrary number and go get your steps in.
Is 10,000 an arbitrary number?
It is, yeah. I Googled, is there any evidence behind it? Turns out no.
No.
Like most things I do in life, there is no reason why I do it. I just sort of follow it and then see hopefully it works. But yeah, it's definitely, it's one of them, it's a nice round number.
Yeah.
And it's definitely one you're doing about 5 miles a day on average. And then if you do that, it helps weight loss and improves cardiovascular fitness. I mean, which is great for everyone. Everyone should be moving as much as they can.
Fantastic. That's great advice. That's great advice.
That is great advice.
That is great advice.
To be fair. Yeah, I know. Yeah, just like,
Now I'm
just pushing that, but.
Now you said there that the 10,000 steps is, not grounded in evidence. Let's hope that today's patient scenarios and the advice given is grounded in evidence.
Yeah, we'll be lucky.
We'll be lucky. David.
Yes.
I'm going to come to you first.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So I've got this sort of patient to discuss like the other day. It's kind of a frequent sort of, I'd say, challenge that we come across in GP surgery work is like sort of like the early requests for medications, and sometimes especially, I think one of the things you see quite frequently is early requests for pain medications.
Yeah.
So had a scenario, got a sort of like request through early, was like, it's a 2-weekly script. I just sort of like, my natural instincts is to go, right, okay, well, it's a 2-weekly script. Patient isn't due from, the 5th to the 19th, something like that. So post-dated to the 19th. And then it's sort of like...
Presume there wasn't any message on the script.
No, just a normal sort of request thing, like, come through. And it's sort of like the max dose, sort of like, because it was like cocodamol was like 8 a day, so you can work that out pretty easily. If you're taking a max dose, that's when the minimum you should have enough to get to then. And then one of the receptionists had come up late in the afternoon sort of thing, saying like, oh, the patient's asking, you've post-dated it, but they're saying they need it now. And I'm like, but mathematically, they shouldn't need it now.
Yeah.
That's why I've post-dated it. I don't really post-date just to wind people up.
Yeah.
Did you not have your crystal ball out and know that you needed it early?
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like, why would you need it early as well, though? Because, like you say, you've got technically 14 days worth of medication. That's the thing. The suggestion is either that you've lost it or then you've overused, and then it becomes. In my head, it's like if you're taking more than that, you shouldn't be taking more than that because you're not meant to take that much like paracetamol over and over again because it's just going to damage.
Max dose every day.
Yeah. So
that obviously. If that was the case, that then requires a conversation with the patient about whether or not they need a different type of painkiller or some other type of treatment.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's the thing is like, I understand like people have like different levels of pain, things like this, and sometimes it will get worse rather than better a lot of the time. But the fact is, it's not like there is sort of those reasons why we don't go above that max, because there's evidence to suggest it's not good for us to take that amount of medication. So then we need to look at stronger pain medications if that's sort of the reason why they're overtaken, which, you know, it happens. People take more. You've got really bad pain, you take more, and sometimes it is. But if it's consistent, then we need to definitely have that conversation. But
would somebody, I mean, contextually, obviously, when you're doing those prescriptions, you push for time, and the two of you both work in busy surgeries, and so potentially there isn't the time to be able to do it. But would somebody ordering pain medication early, for example, would that make you, would part of your mind go, this person probably needs speaking to? Or would you just think, or does it happen so often that it's kind of like people just put it in early out of habit? Or
I think it's like pain medication definitely flags up, or alarm bells ring, because it's like stuff that can sometimes be abused as well. But I always look for, like, sometimes there's like certain patients' names and stuff where I'm like, okay, this happens fairly regularly, and it makes me flag it up a bit more. But it's usually stuff like pain medicines that tend to get requested early, and it's harder when you're trying to, like you say, you push for time and you don't get, sometimes I get a message to say like, oh, this is the reason why it's been ordered early. Can you just do it this time because of this reason? But if it's just put through, like, I'm not sure how early it was when you got the request. Like, if it's like it only got issued yesterday and they're already requesting it again, it's like, okay, why do you need it so early? Like, this is a bit strange.
Yeah.
You haven't told me why. But yeah, usually flags up to me.
Yeah, I'd say, it's sort of like one of those that you see. It's more frequent that you see, like, the pain medications. I think it's like, I think that's in every area of pharmacy, though. It's just like, the stuff that could be, there is that potential for abuse, and we're not saying that everyone's abusing the medication when it's like ordered early, but there is that potential, and that's the sort of like challenge as well. It's like, okay, we're sort of in a position to reduce the potential, and that's part of our job, is to reduce the potential for it to be abused. But then we put in these systems of 2 weekly scripts, weekly scripts. But then you're negating that fact if we then issue them early. Is the other point? Is just like, well, if we were happy just giving it early, we might as well just like fire it out all the time.
Like, why was it on a 2 weekly script? Because that's another thing that flags to me, like when patients are on not monthly, like usual regular monthly scripts.
Yeah, I think it was sort of like, because it was sort of a pattern sort of thing of like ordering early and things like this. But it was. It's a difficult one, I think. So they had previously
been on monthly, and they repeatedly ordered early.
So something's happened, like ordering early multiple times.
Yeah, usually sort of like, first time it had sort of like, usually the pattern is sort of like, if it's a monthly prescription, that's usually the sort of like normal standard amount. But then if it's like, if they're continually ordered early, it's sort of like we try and reduce that quantity, just because then it's less chance for them to go missing or overuse or something like this, and keep a bit of like a sort of like a track on how much it is, and then potentially go down to like weekly. And there's different reasons why people will be on weeklies and stuff like that, but it definitely helps to sort of like keep a track of like how many the patient is using and taking and things like this. But this patient has sort of like been dropped down to 2 weekly, and there was sort of like things sort of saying in a couple of weeks.
There's that thing as well, sorry to interrupt, where it's like, I've had it sometimes where there's something on the prescription to say like the minimum course length is set to a certain amount, which again is another like sort of, make sure you check this prescription and don't order it or don't issue it early. Someone can set like a minimum course length on it, so you shouldn't be like issuing it before then without a proper reason from the patient. Like sometimes people go on holiday and stuff, like valid reasons we do take into consideration, but it's when it's stuff like, oh, I've lost it, and you're like, okay, and there's like crime numbers being given and stuff every week, and you're like, okay, this is a bit dodgy, or like they haven't got the crime numbers, and you're like, this has happened like 6 times in the past month. Stuff like that, it flags it up as a bit.
I suppose it presents different problems, doesn't it, as well? And it also, I think what it highlights to me certainly is these kind of checks and balances and stuff that are in place are there in theory to protect the patient from that thing. But also, I suppose it's like a red flag, isn't it, to the surgery to go, this patient probably needs further engagement.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the thing, is like, if we did see that happening as a repeated behaviour sort of thing, we'd definitely like invite that patient in for a medication review, because that's the thing, like, it could be that their pain isn't controlled on what their current regime is, and that's one of the things, is like, if that's the case, then we need to but that's one of those things. It's quite hard because patients might not necessarily come to us and be like, I'm using too much pain medication, because then they think, oh, well, like people think, oh, I'm using too much.
Yeah.
Whereas it's like, I think patients need to be like, I personally believe patients should be proactive in their healthcare and be like, okay, and I think this is what I spoke to a couple of friends who aren't in the pharmacy profession and stuff, and they were like, I haven't had like a review. I'm on medication, but I haven't had a review with a GP for a year plus. I'm like, that's probably because if you order stuff, a lot of the time, GPs will think, oh, well, you want that medication, and you'll continue it.
Yeah.
Well, rather than like, because you're not seeking a review.
Yeah.
But people don't know that they can, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that there's a bit of a disconnect. I think sometimes as well, it's a bit of a fatigue of dealing with the NHS can be really difficult. And I think there's a bit of fatigue in there as well, isn't it? That people think,
it's going to be too long to get an appointment just to talk about your medication and stuff like this. And
it's going to be a faff or whatever it is. I can't really
like, I'll leave it till next month, and then it just never comes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Go on, David, anyway.
But I just think it's just one of those. It's like if patients sort of like came to us and were like, oh, at this point in time, this isn't covering me, then we could have that open conversation about it. But it's like, without that communication, it's sort of like we'll pick it up at these times where things are being ordered early, to then have that conversation of how is your pain medication, having a pain review. But like, it's potentially on patients as well who can go, you know what, this isn't work. Like, I'm taking more than I've been told to take. At that point, like, I know I work in pharmacy, so obviously it's in the front of my mind. I'd go to my doctor and go, you know what, this isn't working. Is there something else we can try? But I know a lot of people that, don't do that, and probably because they don't know that they can particularly,
It's a good point, actually. I suppose I've not really thought about it in those terms, really, that people might not think they're allowed to ask, or I wonder if almost the reverse is true, in that they think I might get in trouble if I tell them that I'm taking. If I tell them I'm taking more, they'll take it off me.
That's what I was thinking. I mean? But it's always a shared decision. Like, we'll always not just be the first. Like, sometimes when I ring patients for like pain medication reviews, the first thing that they always say is, "Don't take it off me," or "I don't want to reduce." And I'm like, I haven't even started the conversation, and you've already got that mindset of, I'm going to try and take it off you. We're trying to like work together to make it more beneficial for you. This medication might not be the answer to that, but work with me and we'll see what other options. Same with the pain clinic as well. Like, I don't know if you've ever tried to refer someone to pain clinics and they've just like said, oh, they're just going to take the meds off me, kind of thing.
I think there's probably certain areas, presumably conditions and stuff. Pain certainly would be one. I presume mental health is probably the same. Maybe dermatology as well, where the medication treats immediate like symptoms. Do you know what I mean? Where people, it's about quality of life, isn't it? As opposed to, the pain medication is not going to cure the it's not going to stop the pain. It's not going to. It's just going to stop you feeling the pain, I suppose, isn't it? So I think it creates an immediate, urgent need and requirement, and so that the fear sets in. And I think that's probably where it comes from. So you had the patients who had 2 weekly scripts. They've ordered early. Is this the first time you've come across this patient having ordered early, or have you previously had the same thing?
Like, did the name ring a bell or anything, or like the
I think the name the meds did ring a bell, sort of thing. So I was like, oh, let me just have a look. Like, I did check it through and made sure, like, oh yeah, we'd issued it only 2 weeks ago. I'd post-date it for 2 weeks, and then sort of like I ended up trying to walk out the surgery to just go home at end of the day.
How dare you?
And the finishing my day's work, but the patient was still in the surgery, sort of thing, and I had to walk past reception. So I had a conversation with a patient, and he was still sort of like confused about it almost, because the timings that he was ordering was different to when we were like signing the scripts, and I think he was trying to sort of get across like it's different the way he's ordering it. I was like,
was it a case of he'd order it like, and they'd be in the impression like it's taken 2 working days, but then you'd be post-dating it, so you'd be like, well, why is it not getting done after the 2 working days when I've ordered it?
Yeah, I think he was sort of like, it should be well in advance of like back dated. I'm like, well, there's no point giving you medication for weeks before because you're not going to go back in time and take them. But I was sort of just trying to get across, like, you've got enough medication, and we're you know what I mean,
Yeah,
we're
trying to
keeping it to
explain
that. It was just one of those, and then after I sort of like went through it and sort of explained it, I was happy with it, and sort of like you know, we left it there, sort of thing. But it's just one of those. It's the way people order it and things like that. But it's I don't know.
I think it's an interesting case. To me, it feels like it's a bit of a communication thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And clearly, once you've had that conversation with the patients,
Yeah.
you've heard why they're confused, and you've explained to them what your misunderstanding is, this, and this, or whatever. You know, this is the reason why things are how they are.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the discrepancies, particularly with medication and those type of things, particularly when they're to do with processes, because the surgery will have internal processes or procedures or protocols or whatever it is that you're working to, but the patient won't be aware of what those things are. And so there's all these different things at play, and all the patient really cares about is getting the meds that they need. And so it's like a communication thing, isn't it? Patients better understanding, you know, being better explained to patients so they have a better understanding of why things are how they are. I certainly find it when I talk to friends, when they say stuff about, this happened with the doctors, or why is Danny, why does this happen with the surgery, or why is my doctor saying this to me? And you're like, well, it's because of this and this. When you work on this side of it, it's very obvious, isn't it? Because it's your day in and day out, and it makes a lot of sense to you, and you understand it, and it's just second nature, and you get it. I think sitting on the other side of the fence, and you look at it and you go, that's really confusing, I don't understand why that.
100%, definitely. I get that. I think like even like friends and family and stuff like that, when they go to the doctors, they sort of like give me a message and be like, ring me and be like, so doctor said this, like what do they mean? Why would they do that? And I'm like, it's probably because of, you know, the constraints of the NHS and things like this. We're not a diagnostic sort of healthcare system. That's not what we do. We don't do blanket tests and then like dive into that specifics. We sort of like, you know, a lot of doctors will pattern prescribe and things like this, and then go off what it's most likely to be first, rather than sort of like finding out exactly what it is to start with. So I think it's definitely one of those. Definitely communication is a big one. I think one of the things, like you're saying, is also you've got that disconnect a little bit between GP surgeries and community pharmacies as well, because it's sort of like another challenge with post-dating medication and doing medication is the fact that it'll maybe take pharmacies a couple of days to do something, but they say a couple of days if needed. If medication is desperate, it will. I've worked in pharmacies before. You just get that medication done. If it needs to be done, it will be done.
It's weird because I've had that conversation before where they've ordered it early, and I've post-dated it, and then a message comes back to say, well, the pharmacy turnaround is a week. That's why I'm ordering it this early. And I'm like, but that's not really like a reason to order it that early every month. And it's...
we'd send it out every 3 weeks.
I understand the pressure, but a week to do a prescription seems a bit...
We get a similar thing, don't we, around bank holidays where the community pharmacy wants people to order early. But the surgery doesn't want people to order early. And it's funny, you know, because obviously... having worked in this environment for a long time, it's every single time, and everyone gets really annoyed because the pharmacies are sending messages out, and they put like public facing messages out from community pharmacy saying, it's a bank holiday, don't forget to order your meds early, and the whole of general practice is going, please don't do that, because you don't know the repercussions of what it's knocking to us, and it's as if nobody from either building has ever thought to walk into the other person's building and go, should we sort this out? What you're doing is causing us issues, and we're just knocking them back, and that's causing you issues. And we're both on the same team, so why don't we just have a chat?
I know.
And work out a better way of doing this.
Is there any bank holidays coming up at the minute?
End of August.
Oh my god. Okay. Prepare for that.
Are you ready? Should we all take annual leave?
Yeah.
Should we put some requests in now? I'll approve them. We'll do it.
Sound.
Leah.
Yeah.
Hit us with your scenario.
Right, so my one is specifically about a patient on semaglutide. So there's, I don't know if everyone knows at the minute, but semaglutide, there's been major like stock disruptions with the injections and the tablets. So there's been a lot of like sort of queries coming to us, especially the last like couple of weeks, with people saying like, my medication can't be got by the community pharmacy. Alternatives are needed, which has been a big big workload for me personally at the practices. So I was covering a practice for one of our other pharmacists, and I got a query as a screen message, which just said, I think it was from a receptionist initially, saying, "Oh, can you have a look at this prescription for me and just issue this medicine for me?" Because the patient's like in the I think they were in the practice or they were on the phone to the reception saying, "Can you just issue this prescription?" So I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll have a look at it for you." She gave me the EMIS number and stuff, so I had a look at it, and they were like, "Oh, they just need Semaglutide Injections, 0.5 milligram." And I was like, "All right, okay." Obviously, I knew about the stock issues and stuff. So I was having a look into it, and we'd literally just been passed some new guidance, like I think it was the day before, from one of our other colleagues about what we should do in these situations where patients are asking for alternatives to their out-of-stock medicine, semaglutide. So the guidance was basically not to... so they were originally on a 1 milligram injection, but the prescription request was for a 0.5 because the community pharmacy could get that in stock or had it in stock. So they basically wanted me to issue the lower dose in the interim until they had this review with the diabetes nurse in a couple of weeks to discuss like a more long-term option. But they didn't want to be without like any semaglutide until that review. So I was a bit like, okay. So I was read over the guidance again before I said anything back to her. And it said basically not to do what she was suggesting of issuing the lower strengths, because that could then disrupt the stock even more. And it shouldn't really be the case to do that. So I messaged her back and said like, "Oh, I don't know whether this is like being communicated to whoever's asked you to do this. But we're not really meant to issue the lower strength out. It's just a case of they need to be reviewed by either a nurse or a clinician and go through like other options other than semaglutide or similar class of drugs to semaglutide. There needs to be like a discussion on other options for it." And I found out that the receptionist had been told to do this by one of the nurses who was working that day, but she couldn't do it herself because she couldn't prescribe.
Okay.
So she was like, "I've agreed that this is what should happen. I just can't prescribe it. Just want you to do it. Like, this just needs to happen." And I was like, "Well, I'm telling you, I'm not doing that because of this guidance." And she's like, "Well, the nurse has agreed though." And I'm like, "Well, this is not what I have been told to do by this guidance." And it was kind of at a stalemate. So I was like, felt like a bit in a corner of like, okay, is there being pressure put on by the patient on the phone or whatever that like, oh, they're panicking that they're going to be without this diabetes med, which I understand. But I've been told not to do what you're asking me to do. It's kind of like, and because I was covering someone else's practice, I didn't want to just do something that they then had to continue.
bear the brunt of later on.
So it was an interesting one, and I just thought it was like a good topic to talk about because obviously you cover practices as well, like doing them decisions where you don't want to have repercussions for the regular pharmacist and stuff. So yeah, that was my patient. But yeah, what would you have done anything different? Would you have like stood your ground, or
to be honest, I had like
just done it?
No. It's like it's an interesting one actually because it is such a like nationwide thing, isn't it? So like it like sort of like Ozempic's the brand, isn't it? Sort of like is a big sort of like thingy, but it's been marketed as like some like weight loss wonder drug for like basically helping people with type 2 diabetes drop loads of weight, which is great anyway. Also, a reason why you should do 10k steps, good for weight loss.
Tie it into that.
And what you could do is you could do a route of all the local pharmacies and see who has got it in stock. Two birds, one stone.
I like that idea.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it's interesting. But it's sort of like brought this one up because like I say, it's very much like all over the, like national sort of thing. We have had like a lot of guidance come through, and I actually had a patient the other day actually who had sort of like come back to me going, "Oh, I can't get this strength in." And I looked at who'd prescribed it, and I thought, has the patient been on it for a long time? And it turns out no, they'd been prescribed it the day before,
newly prescribed
from our surgery, because it was actually one of the paramedics that works in the GP surgery, and I was like, this is going to be awkward. I thought it was going to be an awkward conversation. Turns out he's a super nice guy, so it's definitely not an awkward conversation. But it's just one of those, because we've got the guidance. I don't know if it was one of our colleagues here or one of the if I got sent it from someone within the surgery I was working at, and it's basically saying like, don't switch the strengths, don't do that, and like and one of the things is don't start new people on it.
Yeah, it's on. I've got it in front of me. We can link it if anyone wants to like view it.
Yeah, we'll stick it in the episode.
Yeah, it's just like one of those. It's like not everyone sees that guidance. So I sort of had this conversation, and the paramedic was like, "Oops, like I did not know.
You don't know.
Yeah,
it's like nationwide. Like you've been living under the rock.
Yeah, I know. Ongoing. Yeah. So he was like, "Oops, I've just started someone on today as well," and I was like, "Oh." So because that's obviously now is the guidance that we need to bring these patients in for a diabetes review to look at something more like long term, because this is going to be out of stock till they're saying like next year,
mid
like
2024 of it.
Yeah, so it's going to be it's one of those. Now I'm sort of like, there's no point me trying to switch you to an alternative that yes, you may get it for this month, but then you're going to have to get something else next month.
You're just kicking the can down the road, aren't you?
Yeah, I just feel like it's one of those. I'm sort of like, with those out of stocks, I just go, no, if I'm honest, can we book them in for a diabetes review sort of ASAP if we've got the capacity, and just look at something. Yes, it is seen as a very good drug, and I understand like the benefits of it, and that's the thing with weight loss. Type 2 diabetes is very, very linked to like, it is such a important step in that healthcare journey for them, but it's just because it's been so popularized. I think it's had a rush on it, and you know, companies have like predictions of how much they're going to sell, I'm sure, and that's how much they make. Yeah. And then when it gets big publicity, like it has done, it's just out of stock. No, like, do you know what I mean? Everyone goes for it, and they're just everyone sort of buys it. So yeah, it's definitely. I'd agree with you. I'd say we need to get them in for a review sort of thing, and it's just that thing of like pushing it around. But
someone else the day before I was covering, again from our place where I got the guidance from, the same person, I'd already text the patient to say like why they hadn't issued it and stuff. So obviously communicated it to them why it wasn't being issued, and there's an ongoing stock issue. The thing that you need to do is book an appointment with the nurse to discuss other options not in that class. Yeah. And then the nurse had then booked the review in 2 weeks. That was when the capacity could allow. Yeah. But then still made the suggestion to, in the interim, do the reduced. And I just didn't. The only thing I could think of is the patient had rang up and said like, I'm worried about not having the medication. And they were already, to be fair to them, they were already on like max doses of I think 3 other medicines for diabetes. They had a HbA1c, so the blood sugars in July were 68. He was a 56-year-old fella, which isn't like too high. It's not. But I could understand why they'd like have a bit of a panic. But is it really going to make much of a difference not having it for 2 weeks when you're already on the other 3 max dose?
Yeah, probably.
Might have just need like a reassuring call to the patient to just say you're going to be fine for the 2 weeks.
Yeah. So in my position as the appointed layperson, in that scenario, so we've got this particular. What explain to me in basic terms what is it for? What is the semaglutide injections for?
So it's for his diabetes, so keeping his blood sugars manageable, basically.
Okay, and so in lieu of having access to that, what's the alternative? Like, what do you do instead?
So, I think you have like different tablets and stuff like this. So you have like, you got your metformins, usually like your most common one. You have like a few different classes of anti-diabetic drug sort of thing to lower your blood sugars, because high blood sugars can sort of like damage organs like kidneys and nerve damage, things like this, and that's some complications of diabetes, but that's what we're trying to reduce those blood sugars for. But the only way, if he's on maximal therapy, so you usually go to like 3, so you go 1 drug and you basically work your way up with type 2 diabetes to about 3 drugs, and then at that point, if your blood sugars still aren't controlled, then you'd look towards going into like insulin therapy and stuff like that, which is like obviously done in secondary care sort of thing. So that's like it's sort of a specialist thing. So, and a lot of patients probably don't want to be on insulin because it seems like a jump up, which it is quite a jump up. It's you're going from not having insulin to being on insulin, and then that's pretty much like it's quite. As far as I'm aware, it's quite hard to come off
for life.
It's once you start on that.
Right,
you have to be on that sort of thing. But
so they were on metformin, max dose glycoside, and empagliflozin, all max doses, and then this semaglutide was like still added because the HbA1c was still not controlled. Yeah. I think they'd been referred to Liverpool Diabetes Society as well. It's no partnership, sorry. Because literally we've exhausted
all the other options.
Every other option, and like you said, insulin being the next step, unless like in a regular practice that I work in, we've got a GP who can start insulin. You can't really start that there, so the next step is to refer them onto someone who's going to manage that and start it and monitor them and things. So that was the next step, and it's just obviously the patient worrying. But
so is that what your outcome was then? Yeah,
so as far when I left it, I just obviously put across to this person, like, this is why I'm not going to do this. Here's the link to the guidance. If the person who's requested this, the nurse, just needs to like read over that, because it literally...
Is this a conversation with the patient that you were having?
No, this was just over screen message to a reception. Okay. She was kind of like the middleman. Like, it felt like she was passing on a message from the nurse, and then she didn't tell me which nurse, so I couldn't respond directly. Yeah. And I was like, just tell them this is the reason why I'm not doing it. Yeah. There's the link to the guidance, because the guidance is only being mentioned to me the day before, so maybe she didn't know that this is what we were following. Here's the link to it. This is why I'm not doing it. Obviously they've got an appointment in 2 weeks. That's what we'd recommend. The patients need reassuring. The HbA1c is not too high. It's probably not going to make that much of a difference until we get them reviewed. Maybe that needs communicating to them. Was happy to do that if they wanted me to, but obviously as capacity allowed in the practice. I never got a response back, so I presume that's what happened. And the colleague before me had already said to refer them to Liverpool Diabetes Partnership. Okay. So that was in hand. It was just a case of the patient, I think, was a bit worried that the blood sugars were going to raise in them 2 weeks waiting for the appointment. Right, okay, I follow you. Okay. Yeah. Be interesting to know the outcome of it, yeah. I'd be interested to know as well. Yeah. Cool. David, have you got any more thoughts? No, just hope the outcome is that they lived happily ever after. Well, you hope they live in a fairy tale? Is that what pretty much, yeah. That's where we don't have to worry about blood sugars. Have to wait till mid-2024 for the stock to come back in. That's like... Hopefully they can get those factories up and running. Get them going. Yeah. Get them going. Pumping out some Ozempic. If you're listening... Whoever it is. Sure. If anyone's got any supplies, let us know. Get on to them. You Novo Disc or something it is. Is it? Is it Novo Nordisk, is it? Oh, it might be. Maybe. Don't know. If it is. Novo Nordisk, if you're listening. pull your fingers out and get some Ozempic going. This episode is not brought to you in association with Ozempic or Novo Nordisk. And please don't send me any free stuff. Please don't send us any. They're going to want it. We get letters all the time. I'm not going into it. Anyway, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your case studies, for your scenarios. Thanks, Sam. Always interesting. Thanks to you, listener, for listening. This episode, as with all of our episodes, was brought to you in association with the My Pharmacist team app, the UK's first peer-to-peer support app for GP pharmacists, trainee pharmacists and pharmacy technicians. You can find out more information at www.mypharmacistteam.co.uk. You can also check us out on all of the various social media platforms. I would particularly recommend the TikTok channel. Our very own Leah is a regular star of the TikTok videos. I am. Videoed by producer Lou. In the corner, little nod from producer Lou, little wave from Leah to producer Lou. What a team effort! I know, yeah. You haven't appeared in any TikTok videos. I know, yeah. I'm surprised by that. Yeah, me too. I'm still waiting for my call up, to be honest. Producer Lou. Casting call. You need to come in on a Friday. Is it usually Friday? No, Friday fun day. All right, so I'll try and make an appearance. That's Fridays as well, so you can get some. Next one. Yep. You've got to be there. I'll try to, because you need to give the people what they want. I mean, to be fair, if there's if there's a letter that comes in asking for me, all those letters that we get, I'll do it.
I'll make sure there's one. Don't you worry about that. Don't you worry about that. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. We'll be back next week with another